Lucy Washington had exactly 3 rules for surviving in Rome: keep her head down, finish her art restoration project at the Galleria Borghese, and absolutely under no circumstances, get involved with the wrong kind of people. She'd followed these rules religiously for 6 months, living a quiet life in her small apartment in Trastevere, losing herself in Renaissance paintings by day and Italian wine by night. That all changed on a rain-soaked Tuesday evening in October. She'd been walking home from the gallery, her portfolio tucked under her arm, when she witnessed something she shouldn't have. In the dim alley beside her favorite cafe, 3 men surrounded another, their voices low and threatening. Lucy's instinct screamed at her to keep walking, but then she saw the glint of a knife. "Hey," the word escaped her lips before she could stop it. "I've called the police." It was a lie, but a convincing one. The 3 men scattered like roaches in sudden light, disappearing into the Roman darkness. Lucy stood frozen, her heart hammering, as the 4th man straightened up from where he'd been crouched against the wall. That's when she first saw Antonio Valentini. He emerged from the shadows like a dark prince from a Baroque painting, all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. Even injured, with blood seeping through his white dress shirt, he moved with a predator's grace. His black hair was disheveled, falling across his forehead, and his eyes, God, those eyes were the color of espresso, dark and intense and fixed directly on her. "You should not have done that," he said in accented English, his voice like gravel and silk. "They will remember your face." Lucy's hands trembled. "You're bleeding, you need a hospital." "No hospitals." He took a step toward her and winced. The tattoos on his forearms were visible where his sleeves had been rolled up, intricate designs of a serpent and a crown, dark ink against olive skin. "You live near here." Every rational thought in Lucy's head screamed danger. This man was clearly involved in something illegal, possibly deadly. The smart thing would be to walk away, to pretend this night never happened. But Lucy had never been as smart as she should be. "2 blocks, she heard herself say. "Can you walk?" Antonio's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so sharp. "I can do many things, Bella. Walking is the least impressive." Getting him up the 4 flights of stairs to her apartment nearly killed them both. Antonio was broader and more muscular than he'd first appeared, and despite his assurances, he was clearly in pain. By the time they reached her door, Lucy was half supporting his weight, acutely aware of the heat of his body against hers, the expensive scent of his cologne mixed with copper blood. Inside, she deposited him on her vintage sofa and went for her first aid kit. When she returned, Antonio had removed his ruined shirt, revealing a torso that looked carved from marble and covered in tattoos. A massive design sprawled across his chest and ribs, a lion with a crown, surrounded by Roman numerals and words in Italian she couldn't quite read. Other tattoos marked his shoulders and back, each one clearly expensive, clearly meaningful. "You're staring," Antonio observed, amusement dancing in his dark eyes despite the blood and pain. "You're in my apartment bleeding on my sofa," Lucy shot back, kneeling beside him with antiseptic and gauze. "I think I've earned the right to stare." She cleaned the knife wound carefully. It was deep but not fatal, missing anything vital by centimeters. Lucy had learned basic first aid from her mother, a nurse, never imagining she'd use it on a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a crime thriller. "What's your name?" Antonio asked as she worked, his accent making the words sound like poetry. Lucy Washington." She met his eyes. "And you are?" Grateful, he caught her wrist gently when she reached for the bandages, his touch sending an unexpected jolt through her. "You saved my life tonight, Lucy Washington. That is not a small thing. Those men would have killed you." Eventually, Antonio's expression hardened, after they got what they wanted. Which was things you should not know about, things that would keep you awake at night. Lucy finished bandaging his wound in silence, but her hands shook slightly. When she was done, Antonio didn't release her wrist. Instead, he studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see past every wall she'd ever built. "You are American," he stated. "From the South, I think. What brings you to Rome?" "Art restoration. I'm working at the Galleria Borghese." Lucy tried to pull her hand back, but Antonio held firm. "And you, what do you do besides get stabbed in alleys?" "I run a business." "What kind of business?" "The kind that ends with getting stabbed in alleys." His smile was dark, dangerous. "You should forget you ever met me, Bella. I am not a good man." "I gathered that from the multiple tattoos and the attempted murder." Antonio laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. "You have fire in you, I like that." "I don't care what you like." Lucy finally yanked her hand free and stood up. You can stay tonight, but tomorrow you need to leave. I can't get involved in whatever this is. Smart girl, Antonio leaned back against her sofa cushions, wincing slightly. But I think it is too late for that. You involved yourself the moment you opened your mouth in that alley. Fear curled in Lucy's stomach. Are you threatening me? I am trying to protect you. His voice softened. Those men tonight, they work for people who do not forget. They will look for the woman who interrupted them. They will find you eventually. Then what am I supposed to do? Lucy demanded, anger replacing fear. I can't just leave. I have a job, a life here. You stay close to me. Antonio's eyes locked with hers. Under my protection, they will not dare touch you. And who protects me from you? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Antonio stood slowly, moving toward her despite his injury. He stopped just inches away, close enough that Lucy could feel the heat radiating from his bare chest, could see the fine details of the lion tattoo that covered his heart. No one, he said quietly, but I promise you this, Lucy Washington, I will never lie to you. I will never pretend to be something I am not. I am dangerous. I am violent when I need to be. I have done things that would horrify you. He lifted his hand, brushing a stray curl from her face with surprising gentleness. But I will keep you safe. That is more than anyone else in this city can offer. Lucy should have stepped back, should have told him to leave, should have called the actual police. Should have done 100 things that a sensible woman would do. Instead, she asked, "What's your full name?" Antonio Valentini. He watched her face carefully. Does that name mean anything to you? It should have. Later, when Lucy had time to think, to do research, she would realize just how much that name meant in Rome's underworld. Antonio Valentini was one of the most powerful men in the Italian Mafia, a young boss who had taken control of his family's empire after his father's death and expanded it ruthlessly. He was feared, respected, and according to every article she would eventually read, absolutely untouchable. But in that moment, standing in her small apartment with this bleeding, beautiful, dangerous man, Lucy only knew one thing for certain. Her life had just changed forever. It means trouble, she finally said. Antonio's smile was slow and predatory. The best things always do, Bella. The best things always do. Chapter 2, the morning after. Lucy didn't sleep that night. How could she, with a mafia boss unconscious on her sofa? She sat in her reading chair across the room, watching Antonio's chest rise and fall, studying the way shadows played across his tattooed skin. She should call someone, the embassy maybe, or just pack a bag and disappear. But something kept her frozen in that chair, curiosity, maybe, or stupidity, or some dangerous combination of both. Antonio Valentini was unlike anyone she'd ever met. There was a darkness in him, yes, but also something else. Something in the way he'd looked at her, like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. Dawn crept through her windows, painting Rome in shades of gold and rose. Antonio stirred, his eyes opening slowly, immediately alert despite having been unconscious moments before. That predator instinct, Lucy thought, always ready for danger. You stayed, he observed, sitting up carefully. It's my apartment. You watched me all night. It wasn't a question. Lucy felt heat rise in her cheeks. I wanted to make sure you didn't die on my furniture. Thoughtful, Antonio stood, stretching carefully, and Lucy tried not to stare at the way his muscles moved under all that inked skin. Coffee. The casual domesticity of the question was so absurd that Lucy laughed. You're asking me for coffee, in my own apartment. I am asking if you would like me to make you coffee. Antonio moved toward her tiny kitchen like he belonged there. You saved my life. The least I can do is return the favor with caffeine. Lucy followed him, fascinated despite herself. You know how to make coffee. Bella, I am Italian. Not knowing how to make coffee would be like not knowing how to breathe. He moved through her kitchen with surprising efficiency, finding her espresso maker, her cups, her sugar. Lucy perched on a stool at her small counter, watching this dangerous, tattooed crime lord make her morning espresso like it was the most natural thing in the world. This is insane, she muttered. Which part? Antonio asked, not turning around. The part where you saved a stranger's life, or the part where you invited him into your home? The part where I'm sitting here having a normal conversation with you like last night didn't happen. Antonio turned to face her, 2 small cups of espresso in his hands. He placed one in front of her, their fingers brushing briefly. That electric jolt again, stronger this time. What did you expect? He asked. That I would wake up and immediately return to being a monster. Are you a monster? Antonio took a sip of his espresso, considering the question. Sometimes, when I need to be, but not with you. Why not with me? Because you are different. He set down his cup. You looked at me last night and saw a person who needed help. Not a name, not a reputation, just a man bleeding in an alley. No one has looked at me like that in a very long time. Lucy's phone buzzed on the counter, her boss at the gallery, wondering where she was. She'd never been late before, never missed a day. But looking at Antonio at this impossible situation, she knew she couldn't just walk away and pretend everything was normal. I have to go to work, she said quietly. Not today, Antonio's voice was firm. Those men saw you clearly, they will be looking. Until I understand the full situation, you stay here. You can't just kidnap me. I am not kidnapping you, I am protecting you, there is a difference. Is there? Lucy challenged, standing to face him. Because from where I'm standing it feels the same. You're telling me I can't leave. Antonio moved closer, and Lucy's breath caught. Up close in the morning light she could see every detail. The slight stubble on his jaw, the tiny scar above his left eyebrow, the flecks of gold in those dark eyes. If I wanted to kidnap you, Bella, you would already be gone, he said softly. I am asking you to trust me, just for today, let me make sure you are safe. And then what? Tomorrow those men are still out there. Next week, next month, when does it end? It ends when I end it. The darkness was back in his voice, cold and absolute. Those men made a mistake last night, they will not make another. Lucy should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something else entirely, a thrill, a pull toward this man who was all wrong for her in every possible way. Tell me about your tattoos, she said suddenly. Antonio blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Why? Because I'm an art restorer. I spend my days studying images, trying to understand what they mean, why they were created. Your tattoos, they're not random, they tell a story. She reached out hesitantly, her fingertips hovering over the lion on his chest. May I? Antonio nodded, and Lucy placed her palm over the tattoo, feeling his heartbeat beneath the ink. Strong, steady, alive. This is your family crest, she said, the Valentini lion. Yes, I got it when I became head of the family. 23 years old, too young, too angry. His hand covered hers, pressing it against his chest. I thought it would make me feel powerful. Instead, it just reminded me of everything I lost. Your father. Among others, Antonio's jaw tightened. Family is complicated in my world. Loyalty and betrayal wear the same face. Lucy traced the Roman numerals that surrounded the lion. These dates. Birth and death, everyone I've lost. My father, my brother, my mother. His voice was carefully neutral, but Lucy heard the pain underneath. They keep me focused, remind me why I do what I do. And this, she moved her hand to the serpent on his forearm. That is about you. Lucy's head snapped up. What? That's impossible, you just met me. Antonio's smile was small, sad. The serpent represents wisdom and protection. I got it 2 years ago, after a woman I was supposed to marry was killed by my enemies. They wanted to hurt me, so they hurt her. I swore then that I would never let anyone close enough to be used against me again. But I also swore that if I ever found someone worth protecting, someone worth the risk, I would do it right. He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles softly. And then you appeared in that alley, all fire and courage and foolishness, like fate giving me a second chance. This is crazy, Lucy whispered. We don't even know each other. Then let me know you. Antonio pulled her closer until they were pressed together, until Lucy could feel every hard plane of his body against hers. Let me spend today learning everything. Your favorite color, your childhood dreams, why you came to Rome, what makes you laugh. Give me one day, Lucy Washington. If you still want to leave tomorrow, I will let you go. It was a lie, they both knew it. Whatever was happening between them, it wasn't something that could be walked away from. Lucy had spent her whole life being careful, making safe choices, coloring inside the lines. And where had it gotten her? A quiet life, a lonely apartment, days spent restoring other people's art instead of creating her own. Looking at Antonio, dangerous, impossible, beautiful Antonio, Lucy made a choice. One day, she agreed. Chapter 3, Unveiled Truths. They spent the morning talking. Antonio ordered food from a nearby restaurant. Apparently crime lords could get delivery, even when they were supposed to be lying low, and they ate on Lucy's small balcony overlooking the Roman rooftops. Lucy told him about growing up in Atlanta, about her mother who'd raised her alone after her father left, about discovering art in a high school class and knowing immediately that it was her purpose. She told him about the scholarship that brought her to Rome, about the restoration project that was supposed to launch her career. Antonio listened like every word mattered, asking questions, remembering details. When it was his turn, he was surprisingly open. I never wanted this life, he admitted, leaning back in his chair. As a child, I wanted to be a doctor. Can you imagine? Antonio Valentini, healer instead of killer. His laugh was bitter. But my father had other plans. In our world, you do not get to choose your destiny. It chooses you. You could walk away, Lucy suggested. Start over somewhere else. Could I? Antonio's eyes met hers. You cannot walk away from blood, from history, from obligation. I have 300 people who depend on me, families who would starve without my protection, businesses that would collapse, debts that would go unpaid. And I have enemies who would hunt me to the ends of the earth if I showed weakness. Walking away is not an option. This is who I am. No, Lucy set down her wine glass. This is what you do. Who you are is something else. The man who makes perfect espresso, who talks about his lost family with pain in his eyes, who promised to protect a stranger, that's who you are. Antonio reached across the table, threading his fingers through hers. You see me very clearly for someone who met me 12 hours ago. I see art every day, layers of paint hiding the truth underneath. I've learned to look deeper. And what do you see when you look at me? Lucy considered the question seriously. A man trying to be good in a world that won't let him. A man who's lonely. A man who's scared that if anyone really knew him, they'd run. Antonio's grip tightened on her hand. And are you running? Not yet. Why not? It was a fair question. Lucy had asked herself the same thing 100 times since dawn. Why wasn't she terrified? Why wasn't she calling the police or the embassy or anyone who could save her from this beautiful disaster? Because I'm lonely too, she admitted. Because for the first time in years I feel alive. Because when you look at me I feel seen, really seen. Not as the quiet girl who keeps her head down, not as the scholarship student who has to prove herself, not as the foreigner who doesn't quite fit, just as Lucy. Antonio stood, pulling her up with him. They stood on her small balcony, Rome spread out beneath them, and Lucy felt like they were the only two people in the world. I want to kiss you, Antonio said quietly. But if I do, everything changes. You need to know that. Once I claim you as mine, I will not let go easily. My world is dangerous, violent, unforgiving. Anyone who stands beside me becomes a target. You're giving me a choice. I am giving you the truth. What you do with it is up to you. Lucy looked at him, really looked. At the tattoos that told stories of loss and loyalty, at the scars that spoke of violence survived, at the eyes that held both darkness and desperate hope. This was a man who could destroy her, who could turn her safe, quiet life into chaos. And God help her, she wanted him anyway. Kiss me, she whispered. Antonio didn't need to be told twice. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath, his hands framing her face like she was something precious and breakable. Lucy melted into him, tasting espresso and danger and desire. The kiss was everything, rough and gentle, demanding and giving, a promise and a warning all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Antonio rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he murmured. From this moment you are mine, Lucy Washington, and I am yours. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Together, Lucy agreed, knowing she was sealing her fate. Chapter 4, The Price of Protection. The knock on the door came an hour later. Antonio moved instantly, pushing Lucy behind him, his entire demeanor changing. The gentle lover vanished, replaced by the predator she'd first glimpsed in that alley. Stay here, he ordered, his voice cold. But Lucy followed him anyway, her heart in her throat. Through the peephole, she saw 3 men in expensive suits, their faces hard and professional. It's okay, Antonio said, relaxing slightly. They're mine. He opened the door and the men filed in, their eyes sweeping the apartment, assessing, calculating. The oldest one, late 40s, with grey at his temples, spoke in rapid Italian. Antonio responded in the same language, his tone authoritative. English, Antonio said finally, for the lady. The grey-haired man switched languages smoothly. Boss, we've handled the situation. The 3 men from last night won't be a problem anymore, but their employer knows about the woman. He's asking questions. Let him ask, Antonio said coldly. Lucy is under my personal protection. Make sure everyone understands what that means. So with all respect, this complicates things. The negotiations with the... I don't care what it complicates. Antonio's voice was steel. This is not up for discussion. Lucy Washington is mine. Anyone who touches her, looks at her wrong, even thinks about her too hard, answers to me personally. Spread the word. The 3 men exchanged glances, but they nodded. As you wish, boss. After they left, Lucy sat down heavily on her sofa. What just happened? I told my people that you are under my protection. By tomorrow, everyone in Rome's underworld will know you are untouchable now. And the negotiations they mentioned. Antonio sighed, sitting beside her. I've been trying to broker peace between my family and a rival organization. It's delicate, complicated. Having you in my life gives them leverage they didn't have before. So I'm a liability. No, Antonio took her face in his hands. You are the only real thing in my life. Everything else, the money, the power, the fear, it's all smoke and mirrors. But you're real, and I will burn down this entire city before I let anyone take you from me. Lucy believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed every word. What do we do now? She asked. Now, Antonio smiled, that dangerous, beautiful smile. Now I show you my world. If you're going to be mine, you need to understand what that means. All of it. The good, the bad, and the bloody. Is there any good? You'll have to decide that for yourself, Bella, but I promise you this, life with me will never be boring. Lucy laughed despite everything. That's one way to put it. Antonio stood, offering his hand. Come, let me show you what it means to be a Valentini's woman. Let me show you the empire you've just become part of. Lucy took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. She was stepping into darkness, into danger, into a world she didn't understand. But with Antonio's hand in hers, she felt strangely unafraid. One condition, she said. Name it. You don't hide anything from me. No lies, no protection through ignorance. If I'm in this, I'm all the way in. I need to know what I'm part of. Antonio's smile was proud, fierce. You are extraordinary, you know that. I'm terrified, Lucy admitted. Good, fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. He kissed her forehead gently. But you're not alone in that fear anymore. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's the promise. As they left her apartment and descended into Antonio's world, a world of shadows and secrets, of power and danger, Lucy realized she'd crossed a threshold she could never return from. Antonio Valentini had become her protection and her greatest risk, her sanctuary and her storm. But looking at him, at the way he held her hand like she was his most precious possession, Lucy couldn't bring herself to regret it. She'd spent her whole life playing it safe. Maybe it was time to be dangerous instead. Maybe it was time to be loved by a man who would burn the world for her. Maybe it was time to stop running from life and start running toward it, even if that life came with tattoos, mafia ties, and a love that was as deadly as it was true.
If you enjoy this story, kindly subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more. See you in the next one.